TT Radio. Nett Radio. Let's go.
And of course, that is what we all need: money, 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 and more money. And that is why we welcome you to our Financial Money Mondays right here on New Era TT Radio. This is where we are joined by our Financial Monday money guy, Garth Thomas. Mr. Thomas, a great morning to you.
And a great morning to you, Sir Charles, and to all our listeners on the New Era TT Radio.
Yes.
Nett Radio. In the perfume, they would say.
In your perfume. I like that. I've heard that one for a little while.
Yeah, neither me. I don't know where it came from. But I picked it up. It was there the way somewhere.
Nice, nice.
I'd like to welcome back for a second rounds. You know, I didn't knock him out in the first round, so I asked him back in the second round to see if I could do better. But seriously, happy to have on the platform with us this morning, Tony Fraser, who I really need not introduce because he is so well known. Thanks much, Tony.
Welcome, Garth. Charlie, how are you going, boy?
I am well, Tony. It's good to see you after all those days.
Yes, yes. The only thing with your present host is that he didn't teach me to make money like he, so you're not scrambling on the side.
Well,
You're in the right place. You're in the right place.
I hope he taught you a few things, Charlo.
well, I've learned some things from him, and I'm learning still.
All right, good. Yes,
Well,
sir.
it's one thing to make the money. I am good at that. I wouldn't lie. I have done very well in terms of making money. Making the money work is another issue. Right? And there's a steep learning curve there.
Yeah.
But we will talk about that. Before we go any further on the platform this morning, Tony and Sir Charles, I want to recognize the passing of my father-in-law. And I know all you didn't know that it was my father-in-law. And that is a cultural icon who left the shores last Tuesday, I think it was. The fancy sailor man,
Okay.
Jason Griffith.
Jason Griffith.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
I really heard of that over the weekend. Yeah.
Right.
Yes. Yes.
I'm seeing resemblances now, Garth.
It's father-in-law. It's father-in-law.
Yeah. I'm seeing resemblances. Yeah.
A Belmont boy.
Yeah. Give him my
Yes,
regards.
Charles. And, you know,
I
there
interviewed
is...
him a few years ago, man.
Eh,
He was still lively and so on, and
He
I
was.
know very well. He was
Yeah.
my barber. Believe it or not, I had a barber at one time in my
he
life.
was my barber too when I was a
Okay.
child. I remember, I think, Tony, I used to pay 25 cents for a trim.
So that was the entry point, Gus.
But Jason Barbershop, Jason and Clyde on Norfolk Street there in Belmont.
Yeah.
That's
I
right.
Palmist. I live down the road from Palmist.
Right.
Well, I am quite surprised that the both of you all never bounce up in the barber shop.
Well, who knows?
Who knows? We may have, a small barber shop right
It
there
was a
by
small barber shop. Yeah.
what's the name of the lane that
Opie
went.
and Jason.
Yeah. Clyde was a Dudu man with a big fro and thing. I remember him very well.
Yeah, that was a Belmont landmark.
Okay.
So, Sir Charles, another one
Yes.
has left us.
Gone to the great beyond.
Yes, and he has a significant legacy. And I was going to say, they have named a road after him and Ken Morris, which is the Griffith Morris Link Road. Now, Sir Charles, I look at these things, It's a link road. It's not a long road. It's a short road out there by Belmont Police Station from Belmont Circular, going from Belmont Circular Road to Lady Young Road because it's one way. It's a link road. Oh my goodness. I would like to go to town on that they should name a link road.
Maybe at another place sometime.
Maybe at another place now.
Yes,
Two cultural icons,
Yes.
Ken Morris, the copper man. All right? Man who made a whole thing out of copper work. And Jason Griffith. Fancy sailor man. Ooh. Boy, there are a lot of psychological implications here. But going down that road this morning, I just felt we needed to recognize him on the program. Okay. So, Sir Charles, you need to give me sharing.
Sure.
Thing they are sending me a request here now. Tony, last week we looked at a template for wealth creation that I have developed. And we were looking to see to what extent maybe it might provide a way forward in terms of, as a nation, our mapping or a pathway to true national development, because we reflected on the fact that we are here now heading pell-mell toward our 63rd anniversary as a nation. And we were asking to what extent have we really made progress as a nation. Today, I want to come back to this template, but I want to go down to the summary, because the template, I will just give you a quick review of the template and then we will go into a discussion on it. The template, let me see if I get sharing from oh yeah man, I get sharing from Sir Charles. That was quick. Okay, slideshow from the beginning. Okay, so Tony, you seeing it on your screen?
Yeah. Yes, yeah. I am.
All right. Okay. Cool. So the template is entitled Three Critical Lines: A Wealth Creation Template. And whilst it was initially designed to help individuals create a pathway to personal wealth, I believe that the components can be applicable at a community, an organization, a community, a national level, because they are concepts and there are principles which are universal. So we looked at the first line as the finish line, and we said we need to begin with the end in mind. And the second line was the starting line, which is the identification of current resources, and that is based upon the premise that you can only work with what you have. And we looked at the fact that those resources are tangibles and intangibles, and that in planning our personal success and development, as well as the organizational or national development, there's a tendency to us to focus on the tangible resources and to ignore the intangibles, which in my book are by far more important. You need both, but certainly you need to get some alignment with the two. So the starting line, finish line, line 1, line 2, the starting line, line 3, the timeline. In the personal application of the template, I recommend a 10-year period to time bind your goals and your achievement of whatever your vision it is you may have for your life. And But I think at a national level, I want to throw out there 2050, which is about 25 years, that we should look forward to what we want our nation to look like in 25 years. So I put forward the question, and this question, is to me a lever to utilize one of our most underrated and therefore underutilized intangible resources, and that is the mind, the human mind. And I see Sir Charles was talking about it on the program this morning. And so the summary says, asking yourself the question, how can I repeatedly, is in fact putting the search engine of your mind to scan the database of your brain internally and the database of the universe externally to source the data required to create your selected goal. So this morning, I want us, Tony, to look at, we were trying to explore the idea of how can we identify a path.
Garth, sorry for a moment. Just give me 45 seconds. I have to attend to something here. I'll be back soon. So continue.
Not a problem. Yeah. So the question, Sir Charles, until Tony comes back, is that how can we, I think there's a concept called the mastermind, where you can have a group of people who together focus on a given project or the solution for a given problem. And the mastermind group seeks to provide a platform that all of these minds can focus on the same question, and the generation of the ideas that come out of that focus are used as guidelines for mapping out a strategy. So I am wondering here, to what extent can we, I was very surprised, Tony, as you're back there. One of the things I was very surprised about last week when we spoke is to find out that there's no basis, that constitutionally there is no availability of a referendum in our constitution, which I find very curious. I suspect I know why it is so, but that is another question. But I am asking myself, if there is no constitutional provision for a referendum, and we feel that there is a need, I think we agreed that there is a need for a pathway, a strategy for us to develop as a nation that stands outside of any political confines. How can we, what mechanism can we use to engage the national mind as a mastermind group to come up with ideas as to how the nation can move forward? And not just ideas, but ideas which can be formulated into some kind of a document for examination by the national, by every, maybe I shouldn't say national, by every Trinbagonian, that it should be simple and well defined. In my thinking, it should be fairly simple and well defined, enabling the broadest possible participation in this exercise. Would a survey of some kind speak to that? And if so, how could we broadcast that? How can we get that out there and get people to participate? That is the thing that I really wanted to focus on this morning, Tony. How can we leverage our mind? I am saying, my premise is that the mind, the human mind, is unquestionably our best resource in terms of our own personal development, and by extension, the development of our nation. Yeah? And this question, how can I is designed to be a lever on that tremendous resource that is our mind, individually and collectively. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, let me start from the point of answering directly. Really, the only way is to continue to propagate the idea through programs like yours, through newspaper articles, television productions, one-on-one groupings, etc., etc. That's really the only way to get that kind of transformation that is required. But let me say is that it will be almost impossible to get any government in office and any opposition party to agree to change the constitution for something like what we are talking about here this morning, to allow for a referendum. And in reality, it will be quite unwise and complicated to make a constitutional change for this one particular item.
Yeah.
Because I am sure that it's connected to a whole series of other matters. So it is not a one change that will go on. And in that regard, I think I talked last time about the number of constitutional documents that have been put forward. Going back to the mid-1970s, when the Hugh Wooding document was put forward, Isaac Hayatali, Ken Gordon, etc., etc. The independent senators put out one also. Even the governments, plural, have put out, part documents. The trick is to get the politicians to buy into it. The last one that included people like Terence Farrell and what's his name? Barry Sinanan was the chairman of that one. It did not go very far, and it was done deliberately not to achieve any advance in terms of constitutional reform, because simply it was appointed a year or so before the elections were due, and therefore there would not be any serious chance or opportunity to get it passed. And that illustrates the point that I'm making. The governments are not interested in constitutional change, transformation. You go back to Pandey, you go back to Robinson, Manning, same thing. Because they feel that the constitution that exists now gives them an advantage, and therefore they don't want to change it. For instance, your notion of putting forward this referendum will put them in a difficult kind of situation, and therefore they will balk at the idea of making this one change. They'll make all kinds of arguments that you can't make one change in the constitution, etc., because it's connected to XYZ, which is reality. So is that the only way, I go back to what I said at the top, the only way is to keep promoting the idea and get sufficient people mobilized around constitutional reform.
Do you think that it can happen? We're living here now in the 21st century. There are technologies available to us now that were not available before, especially in terms of the mass media and in terms of communicating with the broader publics. Do you see any hope of creating that consciousness? Because as I say consciousness, Tony, I think about 1970. All right, 1970, the what we have called the Black Power Revolution in Trinidad and Tobago created a change in consciousness in the land. Is there anything we can learn from that in terms of promoting some change in consciousness again for us to move forward as a nation?
Yeah, if you're asking if we need another 1970, yes, the answer is yes. And as you know, 1970 brought a lot of changes to it, including, I point to you, dear fellow Garth, that people like yourself would not have been taken seriously as financial experts plotting, and planning the way forward for people, because we had a certain kind of view of what a financial establishment and what in reality existed in a financial establishment. He's a red man, but that wasn't sufficient, partner. That won't get you through the door. I make that a little bit jokingly, but seriously.
Yes.
So it's that 1970 did a lot, and you need that kind of transformational thinking once again.
Do you think that obviously I don't think that taking to the streets again is going to do the job, which was a key part of the strategy employed in 1970 and beyond. But we now have, whereas before, Tony, before when you drive down the highway, you used to see billboards. You still see them, but they were the primary means of communication at one time. But now we have the internet, which is the information superhighway with all kinds of variations and mechanisms on that highway for the promotion of ideas and information. Do you think that we can utilize the technology to achieve the same objectives that marching on the streets in 1970 did?
Yes, I am sure you can. And it is required, and as you indicated, it is so much easier and technologically possible to do that kind of linkages and so on. But it cannot be a one institutional step. Ultimately, have to put people on the road. Politicians who listen to internet stuff and so on and so on. They deal with reality. Internet can be the catalyst for that kind of action, but ultimately, people have to come on the streets. I remember some years ago, it might have been towards the end of the 1990s, there was a bank that had there were industrial problems in the bank, and there were protests, small protests within the bank system and so on. I'm sure that they weren't using internet at that point in time. It was still too early for it.
Yeah.
But there was some kind of that kind of action. However, the only time the bank changed its mind is when the union involved put its workers on the streets. And it was an interesting time where bank workers were on the streets. I remember a good friend of mine who was a senior official of the bank. I saw him walking along, it was at Duke Street, in the protests. I'm talking about a very senior official. So I went and I pulled his leg a bit. I said, well, how are you demonstrating in this thing, boy? That's for low-level workers. He said, management don't feel and hear until you throw some heavyweights at them. That was his response in different words, but that was essential.
Yes.
So yes. My response is yes. It can. Incidentally, the internet was used considerably in terms of remember what the West called the Arab revolt or something like that. They call it to trigger that revolt, as it were. But when it really started taking traction was when the people went onto the streets. So ultimately, you have to force people to get out on the streets.
Okay.
The Arab Spring, it was called Arab Spring.
Okay. I'm not familiar with it, but I'm very interested in the fact that. So I was trying to suggest that the street we needed to get on was the internet, the highway, but you feel that it has eventually to hit real streets.
Yeah. No, don't get me wrong. I agree that the internet can be used to mobilize and to trigger and to inform and educate, but you have to take a step after that.
Okay, it can't stop there.
No, it can't stop there.
All right. Okay, so I am looking now at possible models. Let me. Before I introduce that, let me give you a statement by Peter Drucker. right, Peter Drucker made a statement that culture eats strategy for breakfast. I think you're familiar with it. I'm sure you're familiar with it.
Yes,
Culture eats strategy for breakfast. All right. And they say that that is really all about compatibility. I am looking at here at the beginning of our show, we recognize the passing of a cultural icon. We know that a central part of our culture as Trinbagonians is carnival. You have any thoughts as to how perhaps the ethos that is generated by carnival could be expanded and be utilized in crossing the barriers? The only thing I know it is temporary, and I know that I think we mentioned it last week that Valentino spoke to it. But the only thing I know that causes all of the divisions in the society to disappear, albeit temporarily, is carnival. It is the culture. Any hopes? Any ideas?
Absolutely. The culture in all its forms can be used. And if you remember 1970, culture was a big element of this awakening. In fact, the whole thing was based on culture. It is that black people, Indian people, I remember the banner as Afro and Indians Unite, something like that. The whole thing was, right. The whole thing was cultural. And remember, NJAC had a cultural arm that put on all these shows, calypso shows, etc., etc. What was it called? National Joint Action Cultural Committee, I think, was the branch of the whole NJAC. So yes. Culture is, let me go a further distance, Garth, to say, is if we don't introduce a culture into the transformation, then we're not going anywhere. So it is not that I am saying that culture will help. Culture has to be central to it. The whole thing, you remember 1970 very well, the whole thing about it was culture. You had to change the cultural patterns that only a certain kind of person could get into finance, could manage business, etc. That's cultural change. So that when I talk about culture in this respect, I don't know how far you perceive of it. It is cultural transformation in all its forms. Leroy Clark has to become significant in that. And also the other elements of the culture. Mangal Patasar, cultural transformation. He has steel pan inside of the band with the sitar and so on. So culture is centered to it. If you don't have culture, you don't have change.
All right. So the issue now is how can we create the ascendancy of culture to take center stage? I have long, maybe, I know, I don't go down that road, but I have long advocated that one of the intangible resources we possess as a nation is our culture. And that confining the cultural expression to primarily 2 days, because yes, we have Indian Arrival Day and we have Eid ul-Fitr and we have all of these public holidays. Maybe there's something there, Tony, about leveraging the celebration of these things into a wider context rather than it just being, as spiritual Baptists, I think we've done, people bemoan the fact about how we have so many public holidays. But I don't know if we have understood the potential in celebrating all these different aspects of our culture to enable the transformation that must take place.
Sorry, that was a question you posed?
Yes,
I was distracted for a moment.
That is correct. Quite all right. You're as human as the rest of us. I was saying that how can we make culture central to this transformation process? And I was referring to the fact that we have points of reference already established in all of these public holidays that the various elements of our society have been granted. Yes? How can we make these holidays, which I don't know to what extent these holidays have been really recognized as a vehicle for cultural transformation. You have any thoughts on that?
Well, let me say, Garth, that one group of people in the society have made great use of it and continue to make great use of it. The cultural holidays, the cultural recognition, even if they are not holidays, the Hindu community has done that very well in terms of advancing culture from nothing. Think about it. You like me, we go back some time. If you go back to the 60s and 70s, the Indian holidays, well, they did not exist at that point in time. And we knew very little, say in the Port of Spain area, about Indo-Trinidadian cultural patterns and festivals and so on. They have become center to our civilization today because the culture was promoted in very significant ways. And I'm talking about when I was a little fella, there was a lady outside my primary school who used to sell, it wasn't called doubles at that point in time, bake and chana or chana and bake or something like.
Yes, Bara.
Bara. Yeah, you go back like me, partner. Yeah, bara and chana. Now doubles everywhere in Port of Spain, in San Fernando, in the deep in Debe, etc., etc. So that is cultural promotion. The Mahasabha, cultural promotion, putting their people on stage. You look at television. I'm talking reality, you know. Me ain't talking no race. I talk in reality. You look on television. You see Indians are promoted on television. Bade Sagan Maharaj. Sorry, I got the wrong Maharaj. Sat Maharaj, not the original Badis Sagan Maharaj. Sat Maharaj told me, Sat was a fella I like, you know, because you know why he used to say his piece on who vex loss. We disagreed many times, but Sat never refused an invitation from me to talk on television. That time I was on television, and we disagreed sometimes fundamentally, but it was in good spirits. Sat told me that the Mahasabha had a plan to put Indian people on television and radio to promote the culture, and they have done that wonderfully well. So, I have to be careful in saying this. Other groups of people in the society have to engage their cultural traditions in a significant way and put them on the pattern. And when I'm talking about cultural traditions, I ain't talking about wearing a dashiki downtown, you know. Yeah, you do that. But we're talking about relying upon ancestral ways and so on and so on. And so the food we eat, what we promote, etc., etc. So I don't know how to say it again. Yes, culture has to be significant, and if culture is not used on a national scale over the different groups, we won't be successful.
Yeah.
I hope that answers your question.
Yes, it does. It is central to the issue, you know, because I'm trying to engage here the very thing that I have promoted here. Maybe I should take down this stop sharing here now. Yeah. Okay. The lever that I am promoting to access the greatest resource that is available to each of us, which is our minds. You know, and every time I talk about mind, Tony, you know, I always hasten to make sure that people understand the difference between the brain and the mind, because we confuse the two all the time, you know. If you crack open the average person's head, you should find, sometimes I wonder, but you should find a physical organ called the brain. The mind, on the other hand, has been, so that's a tangible, But the mind, on the other hand, has been described as an intangible, as an electromagnetic field that is generated by the brain. So that there is this resource. And people always talk about the mind and the brain and stuff, but I don't know to what extent we engage the resource that is so priceless. Yes? And I want to ask the question, Tony, if there was some way that I could bring to the national consciousness a need for every one of us to engage the question, how can we as a nation move forward to a greater extent than we have so far? How can we tap into the resources? Look at Jason Griffith. Look at his work. Look at Peter Minshall. Look at his work. Look at Sito Velasquez. Look at all our mass people. Look at the exhibition. Can you look at a Minshall piece and think it happened by chance? All right? These were complex designs that captured the imagination. Now, you see that part there, Tony? The need for the national imagination to be captured. Yes? I always remember Sesame Street. And I believe that the success of Sesame Street centered around the fact that it captured everybody's imagination. There was a resonance. And if we are going to provoke the national mind, to seek long-term solutions to the problems we face as a nation, somehow we have to capture the imagination. I don't know if it's through mass, I don't know how it is, but somehow.
We have to go on the road with it. All the things that we are talking about, we have to spread that information far and wide. We have to incorporate all kinds of people. And you're right, we have the technology that did not exist before. But there was another kind of communication, the communication between and amongst people on the ground. And how did 1970 start? I remember very well 2-3 little people walking through Port of Spain and so on. And then they extend the march to Shantytown, which it was at that point in time. Right. And so more come in. And then this fellow got, the police shot him. The police helped bring 1970 into existence. Can't remember his name at the point in time. Then there was a funeral that came. And before all of that, we sometimes forget Garth, which I'm sure that you remember very well. 1968. A fella, a calypso named Duke, sang a calypso that Black is Beautiful. That's before people hit the streets in 1970.
That's correct.
Cultural, people start to look at themselves differently and so on. So we have to use other mechanisms. You're right. We have to use the internet. We have to use all of those things which did not exist at that point in time. But yet, the mobilization happened. I went searching for a book. The author will come on. Garth was thinking in kind of similar ways because I'm running a series now on how do we transform these little black boys on the streets. Gypsy's little black boy. You remember that calypso?
Yes, yes.
And so we've gone through a couple of them, including Gypsy, including the steel man, whatever his name is, and so on. And here is a book by a fellow called Lennox Toussaint, Reverend Lennox Toussaint, who is going to be on my program this afternoon. Sorry for stealing a little bit of your time there.
By no means. Promote.
And this is if viewers can see, this is the book that he has written about his success moving from a loader on a truck. You tell me like Shadow, he was Friday afternoon, he loading thing outside United Grocers for Nestle inside the thing with your old pants and so on. And you can imagine the shamey feeling, young ladies passing and they ain't going to take him on with nothing. But where one of the things that he started in, and let me see if you remember the group called Pine Toppers in 1970. They used to promote fetes
Yeah.
And they bring out a mass on Carnival Juve morning, 1970, February, whatever date it was. And listen to the name of the band. It was called The Truth About Blacks Before, After, and Now. And the depictions of the band by Topper's people and so on talked about how Africans were before, how they got shackled in slavery and so on, and what is the potential going forward. Black Power Juve Morning, that was a significant contributor. I remember seeing the band by Piccadilly Street by the Dry River. Now, when you come up Prince Street and you turn in left by the Dry River, I was startled. They had pictures of people like Fanon and James and so on.
Mm-hmm.
That was cultural promotion. Look at the consciousness that came out of it, that black people should own some business. When I was a little fella and you go down Charlotte Street, all them little one-door store, little black people, black man and so on, own them store. Yeah, you go down there, you ain't see nothing. Chinese come from where they come from. Yeah, own them store. When you're going up Abercrombie Street, I remember a bespoke tailor called Blackman.
Yes.
Yeah, he was the mayor, or was it his brother?
I know who you're talking. He had a shop on the corner of St. Vincent Street.
Absolutely.
And Independence Square at one time.
Yeah, it wasn't exactly at the corner.
It was yes.
A building above
yes.
the corner. All right, and
it was not Taylor. It was not Eddie Taylor. It was his name escapes me right now, but I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, Blackman was his name.
Yeah.
I think he became mayor of the city at one point in time.
Yes, he was.
Yeah, and so that kind of consciousness was bred. Juve Morning. There was another band on that Juve Morning, and Lennox told me they weren't linked at all. This band, the other band, was from St. James, and it was called 1,000 White Devils. Again, portraying the same thing. And according to Lennox, there were no links between the two bands.
There's a consciousness, yes. It was no visible link, yeah.
Yeah. When one band see this other band playing a similar kind of, they shocked because there was no plan for it and so on. So, Garth, you're onto a good thing. Cultural transformation. Yeah. Remember the NJAC shows, black culture in arts or black arts in tradition or something like
black
that.
Traditions, I think. Black traditions.
Black traditions in art. And they brought out some of these Calypsonians onto the stage who nobody had heard of. Beginner came back from London, and Beginner was on the stage. So that all of those things contributed very significantly to that outburst that we know about today. Yeah?
All right, Tony, we need to make a little space here for those who would like to call in and contribute to the discussion. And we are really looking for ideas. We are looking for ideas by which the promotion of our culture in all of its diversity, and there is a unity in the diversity which we should not ignore, at least which we cannot afford to ignore, because we are Trinis and all of the elements, I mean, Tony called me a red man, but it have plenty of red men in Trinidad and Tobago. All right, like me, I mean, we don't have an ancestry in Trinidad, Tony, but I'm sure if I started to dig up,
you remember what was the statement about red men?
No, what's that?
If you're red, you're dead.
Yeah. Yes.
If you're black, stay in the back.
Yeah. So Charles, we can take some calls.
Yes, we can, and we actually have a caller online already. So let's take the call.
Caller,
morning to you. Welcome to the discussion.
Yes, gentlemen. First of all, just by the way, Jason's barbershop was very, very close to where I live. And Steady used to be my barber. Not so much Jason, but Steady. And I know you remember Steady, a very jovial man. Right. I have a question that relates to this matter thing. And I put it like this, will we see a manifestation of the NJAC banner. Africans and Indians unite.
Right.
Reflected in the new dollar bill, the bill to come, the new dollar bill to come. Will we see a reflection of that ideal that you all are speaking about of Indians and Africans uniting on that new dollar bill? And the last thing I want to say, by way of proposal, let us propose that all the young men we see are injured, and women, young men and women, wherever we see them, meet them in schools, on the block, wherever, that we see them, meet them, greet them as engineers, architects, doctors, lawyers, and what have you. Aim for the skies, and we should probably get many stars along the way. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you. Thank you. Much appreciated the comment. And we asking of you that you engage all of your, don't know if you have a contact list, if it's a WhatsApp man or whatever, but engage the people in your circle of reference in this discussion. We need this discussion to really penetrate to all the areas of the society, and the people who are listening to this program, if you feel there's value and validity in the cause, and the cause is the development of this nation that we call Trinbago, let us get the conversation going. Let us ask the question, how can we move this thing forward? Any other calls, Sir Charles?
Right now, no, we don't.
If you want anything else. Huh?
No, we don't.
All right. Apparently, it's not provocative enough, Sir Charles.
I wouldn't go that far.
No, but it is serious.
Yes, I would like to take a shot at the first question that the proposal really. I see it more as a proposal and a question.
Tony, let me just let you hold it right there as the caller come in. Let me take it. Caller.
Okay, sure.
Caller,
Sure.
morning to you.
A great morning to you, Sir Charles.
Great morning to
you, Mr. Thomas, and a great morning to you, Mr. Tony.
Yes, and to you, sir.
Nice.
As Junior.
Since last week, I wanted to get into this particular discussion, right? Because we're talking about culture and how the culture could bring us together, right? And even I hear Mr. Tony and Mr. Garth talking about the culture, and as Mr. Tony said, the East Indian community, right, would have taken their culture and would have bring it up, you know. But I want to now here was my question, because I even wanted was to ask the question last week, right? Because we see, all right, so that we have independence, right? And when the UNC, not the UNC and government not in power, they do attend our independence and celebration. However, when they are in power, they find it fit to attend the independence and celebration, right? While the other people, which is the PNM, whether in government or out of government, would attend the independence and celebration, everything that happened, right? So is it so we come back to culture? Is it that, all right, so we talk about the East Indian, and I will be bold. Is it that they are promoting the culture, or they are promoting the culture for their people exclusive of the other people, right? So, and here what I'm saying, you find African people will quicker gravitate to other people, have no problem then in trying to celebrate and understand other people's culture. But you find now the other way around, right? While, yes, you're seeing little bits and fraction today, right, coming out celebrating, right? So, like for example, I could give you a proper example, right? So, like I belong to a church, right? So we talking about promoting the culture and different thing, right? I belong to a church. The church is a Pentecostal church, right? So we would celebrate, right? When we would celebrate East Indian Arrival Day, right? And we will celebrate it by wearing, wearing East Indian wear,
Saris and
and
stuff. Yeah.
also people who are knowledgeable, because again that is a day that we could all celebrate, because it's not only East Indian people in a pose of a Diwali, where Hindu people celebrate Diwali. However, East Indian Arrival Day, all right, we have East Indian of all different backgrounds that can celebrate that. So that is one of the ways that we help in terms of promoting the culture. So I hope that all you understand the question that you're asking, and I will listen off it. I'll go on the later.
All right. Thank you, sir. Thanks for that contribution. You were saying, Tony.
Yeah, I was saying, I seem to have lost my thought in all of this. Remind me of what we were talking about before. It centered around all of that. What the first caller talked about.
The first caller was talking about the fact that you were making me rake my memory out now myself. His thing was that the questions asked relative to culture,
Mhm.
all right, were not being significantly addressed, I believe. If I paraphrase what he was saying.
Yeah. I seem to have lost the thought.
Yeah.
We'll probably come back. It's a function of age, Garth.
Hide behind that.
Yeah. But it was making some significant connections between the culture and what we do and how we do it and so on. And Indo-Trinidad has done well. It's another point which is not the original visit. It's a point that J.D. Elder used to make all the time. I interviewed him a number of times. I used to do a program from Tobago, and he was there, and I spoke to him. He said that culture is also for making a living. It also has economic purposes to it. Indo-Trinidad has made economic wealth out of its culture, from doubles and roti, selling jewelry, etc., etc., etc. They have done well, or they have converted the culture into something, which I think
monetize the culture.
Yeah, which I think is a point that you're making here. We have to have culture, but it must not only be a pastime. It must become part of our lives,
Central,
and we must not be afraid to say, as J.D. Elder used to say and has written about, is that culture must make a living, and the cultural artists must make a living out of their culture. The steel yards have to be used to develop not only the cultural importance and consciousness, but how do you make dollars and cents out of it? And I think we have done well in some aspects of our culture, in terms of, as you said, monetizing elements of that culture. Leroy Clark did very well in terms of his pictures, his art, even his ideas that he expressed, so that we can't see culture as something. Perhaps, Gus, perhaps, and maybe I am also guilty of it. We think of culture as something we jump up on Carnival Monday or Tuesday, we wear a costume, and we done with that. But you know what? China is making very good use of our culture, because I am told all of the costumes that are made now by the big bands are made in China. I remember, and I don't know if you remember, but what's her name? Lois. She was the wife of the masked man who did all the oceans and so on Frederick Street, just opposite the jail, coming down south of Frederick Street, coming down the road. She was also a carnival queen, but she was a seamstress. And if you come 2 months, 3 months before carnival, the whole little place there stocked with carnival costumes. Now they are being made in China. So we have given off elements, the economic elements of our culture. We keep the wine up and the jam up, and nobody could wine like we woman on carnival day and sing. So I know that getting me anywhere. But the financial, economic elements of it.
Yeah, we have given away.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, we are at that point where we have to wrap it at this point.
Yes, Sir Charles. Well, the discussion is so very relevant, and there are so many aspects of our culture that others have taken and that making millions from it. It is something, as we discuss this question, we must bend our minds to, and we must seek to promote it at every stage. And perhaps, well, not perhaps, but I'm sure that Nett Radio can play a very significant role in this, Sir Charles.
Well, trust me, there is a part to play, and we are going to play it very, very shortly.
All right. So thank you all. Thank you, Tony, for your involvement, and let us keep in touch. And for all those out there in Nett Radio land, blessings on you. And if you need to contact me, it's Garth Thomas. Every cent counts. 680-3185. 680-3185. WhatsApp me. Give me your name and an email address, and we can talk.
Okay, thank you very much, Garth. Thank you very much, Tony. And Junior said they did not answer his question, but next time we'll deal with that.
Tell him what's happened to me.
Yeah. Okay, no problem. People, this has been Every Cent Counts right here on New Era TT Radio. Straight ahead, we have our 12 o'clock news. Okay.
Which is every step, and it is more than one day. Now it's not getting money that judge you by. It's what you want.
The news you need. The clarity you deserve. Local, regional, global. This is Nett Radio News Now.
This is your news update for Monday, June 23rd, 2025. I am Amanda Mitchell with New Era TT Radio. Despite rumors on social media, 38-year-old prison officer Govindra Balgobin is still alive after being ambushed.